So I also got to speak to John Lear, who we all know from ufology. And I contacted John, and he reached out to me and said, yeah, give me a call. So I rang him, and he went, yeah, no, you're totally wrong. So then I went back to Timothy Good and I said, Tim, John Lear says this. And Tim goes, yeah, John Lear's right. So, a 4-year section of writing and research then was canned, and I had to start again.
The following is my conversation with Patrick Welby-Everard. Patrick is a really good friend of mine, and I've known him for many years. This interview's been a long time coming. Patrick is an author and ufologist. In this conversation, we'll discuss everything from the current state of affairs with disclosure in the US to his book and his sighting in 1990. So, the following is my conversation with Patrick Welby-Everard. How are you, man?
I'm really good. Yeah, really excited about this, actually. When you suggested this, I thought, yeah, let's do it. It'll be good fun, and it'll be nice to catch up as well, because I haven't seen you really for a proper chinwag for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's jump in, and I'm sure we'll go down several rabbit holes. What first piqued your interest in the UFO UAP subject?
Yeah, an interesting question. I think really I've always had a bit of an interest in things that are different, whatever it is. For me, what really did it was in 1990, I saw a UFO. Okay, and I saw one, and it's a bit of an odd memory, because there are some things with the memory that I sort of do recall, and I'm not sure if they're real or not. But what I do remember was seeing an object. I saw it. It was landed. It was on the ground. It was late at night, and that moment really was what took me down what we call the rabbit hole as ufology. From then, I didn't really discuss that, because ufology at that time was very fringe, and you were a joke. Everyone laughed at you. That's what you became. And it took me down that rabbit hole where I eventually had to talk to somebody about it. And I was in Lincoln, in a bookshop in Lincoln. I picked up a book by Timothy Good called Above Top Secret. And I bought the book. I wrote to Timothy Good, and Tim Good wrote back to me. And we sort of conversed a few times over the years and stuff. And that could have brought me up a bit more. And those are pre-internet days. So a lot of the information that we were getting was quite loose. So I subscribed to the Fortean Times. I joined Bufora, which is a British UFO Research Association. And I used to get sort of letters and bits and pieces from them. And that was it. And that's really where I started. And I think really it peaked very much in probably the 2005 time when I was writing my book. And that's really where it sort of started for me. And that's where the rabbit hole got darker and darker and darker and deeper and deeper and deeper as I disappeared into it.
Can you are you happy to talk about your experience in 1990? What did you see?
Yeah, I was coming back. Yeah, I was coming back from a local town near where we live, and where I live, I come out through the countryside. And as I was driving out, I noticed I was in a very rural location, so I was in the middle of nowhere. And to my right, I noticed a red light, and I thought, okay, that's strange. So I just slowed down, looked at it, and it was in a field. And it would have been about 15 foot above the ground. I then could see a silhouette of a shape. So, because it was dark, it wasn't like it was a bright glowing object or anything. It was just a silhouette of a shape. It wasn't a circular disc. It was more of a sort of an oblong shape. It's more square, more angular. I can't even be sure if it was square or triangular. I don't know, because I didn't see that much of it. And I sort of slowed down, looked at it, thought, well, that's odd. Is that something on top of something else? Maybe something on top of a haystack or something. But I could see there was nothing below it. I could just see a silhouette in the darkness. And at the bottom of the road where I was driving, there's a sort of an S-bend, quite a sort of, it goes like that. And I got to the first right-hander. And as I went round it, I could then see some lights on the front of it. At which point I was really curious, and I stopped the car and got out because I could pull over. There's a little pulling point. Got out and had a look at it, and then I suddenly got the heebie-jeebies as such, and thought, oh, this isn't right. Something made me jump. I can't remember what it was, but I really jumped, massive adrenaline rush. At which point I then saw it rising off the ground and it disappeared out of view. I was a good 300 yards, 400 yards from it, so I wasn't close to it.
Yeah.
No idea what it was, and that was it. That was really what sort of started me off and got me digging into the subject.
How old were you then?
I was 20. I was I'd been driving for about sort of 2 or 3 years and stuff, and I was just coming back from a friend's house. I was driving an old MG Metro at the time it was, it just made me jump. I literally got home, thought that's odd, went to bed and didn't talk about it because I thought nobody will believe me. You know, nobody does believe you. Certainly in those days, it was one of those things where everyone would laugh at you and say, had you been drinking? No, I don't drink, drive, and I don't take drugs. So, yeah.
That was going to be my next question, really, was that I've never had an experience myself, but I always wonder how I would react to it, how I would just, you'd want to discuss it. I mean, this is hugely significant. You're seeing something incredible. And to feel like you can't talk about it, it's crazy.
Yeah, at the time it really was. You couldn't talk about it, and you didn't discuss it. I had a few options, and one of the options was obviously to speak to when I found Tim Good's book, was to write to Tim Good, which is what I did, because I figured that he might be able to give me an explanation. He might be able to say, oh no, we know what that is, it's this, it's that, or whatever. And I remember him writing back and said, funnily enough, there's been a few not dish-shaped craft, but maybe a sort of more solid angular-shaped craft seen. If anything, I'd say it probably, from the drawings of the crafts that we've seen in the past, I would say it looks more like the Rendlesham Forest incident object. It was more like that sort of shape. It wasn't a disc shape. So, I wrote to Tim, and then he gave me a little bit of information and just sort of keep in touch and so on. But then that's when I started sort of buying books and things and sort of looking into the subject. And I've got one of them here, actually. This is by a lady called Jenny Randalls. That's a first edition. And I've always enjoyed Jenny Randalls as an author. She's a brilliant author. And I bought one of her books. I bought a few other of her books. And she's a British UFO researcher, so it's quite nice that we're not looking at Roswell and all those sort of the Corona incidents and so on. We're actually looking at some of the British incidents, and I was able to read that book and think, actually, I'm not alone. It's not just me that's seen this, and so it was a bit of an eye opener for me, that was. But yeah, I mean, because there's no internet and the world was a very different place in 1990. We're a lot more open to other people's opinions now. In 1990, you weren't. Yeah. And that's why you kept it quiet to yourself, and you really didn't discuss it. Yeah.
So let's come on to being an author then. So you've written a novel, Spiders in the Curtains.
Yep.
I'm assuming that come about because of your experience. Talk me through that process. What made you think I want to write a book about this, or certainly about the Rendlesham sort of element to it?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed writing. Always enjoyed writing. I'm not particularly. I wouldn't say I'm an academic or anything like that. I'm not. And in my eyes, there's no such thing as a bad book. There's books that you enjoy and books you don't like, but it doesn't mean it's a bad book. The only bad book that's ever existed is the book that hasn't been written. Because there's a lot of people who go, oh, no, I'm not writing a book because, I can't write. You can write. So I've always wanted to write a book. And I had an idea for a book, and I published it. It took me 14 years to write because I researched it. And the Spiders in the Curtains is based around the sort of ufology stories. So the Rendlesham Forest incident, maybe, and all sorts of other bits and pieces that were taken from different sort of UFO ideas, obviously Roswell, Groom Lake, TR3B, all of these different stories. I sort of basically stuck them in a huge pot, shook it up a bit, poured it out, and used them within the book. And there's stories of High Brazil, which comes from the Rendlesham Forest incident. And the problem with writing it is I wanted to write a novel. I wanted it to be a science fiction. I wanted it to be a thriller. But I wanted it to work on the back of these sort of UFO stories that we were all people, ufologists like myself and yourself, that are interested in the subject. These are stories we knew. So I knew I was up against a sort of tough audience. It would be one of those audiences where you get it wrong and they're going to smack you and they're not going to be happy with you. So I had to research it, which is why it took me such a long period of time. Plus I was writing it in spare time. And there's a section of it that I wrote, and it took me 4 years to write. And then after 4 years, I realized that, oh, that's been really updated with new information. So I had to go back and rewrite it. It also didn't help that I spoke to Timothy Good when I was writing that as well, and said, Tim, this is my theory. What do you think? And he went, no, you're way out. So I also got to speak to John Lear, who we all know from ufology. And I contacted John, and he reached out to me and said, yeah, give me a call. So I rang him, and he went, yeah, no, you're totally wrong. So then I went back to Timothy Good and I said, Tim, John Lear says this. And Tim goes, yeah, John Lear's right. So a 4-year section of writing and research then was canned, and I had to start again. But that was kind of the fun of it, because the subject of ufology and the UFO thing is constantly evolving. It never stops. There's always some new information coming out. A story that may have previously been spoken about is refreshed, and you've got new info. It's like the Roswell story. We've all heard of that. Everybody has. Everyone reading your podcasts or listening to your podcast, or looking at your social media pages knows of this story. Every now and then a new bit of information comes out, and it might be very, very tiny, but it's very significant. And that's what I found when I was writing Spiders in the Curtains. I really, really wanted to make sure that this book was honest to the subject as it could be. But also I wanted it to be a thriller. I wanted it to be a good fun. I wanted it to be a good read. I wanted someone to say, yeah, I can really enjoy that. It was good fun. It was a good book. It was interesting, and so on. So excuse me, the dog's coming up. So that's really why I did it. And I also did it as an example to my children to say, look, you can do anything. If you want to do something, you can actually do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm proud of it. It's a great book. And the only thing they say your debut novel should be like 75,000 words. Well, this turned out to be 146,000 words. So I went a little bit over, but like everything you do, and you get carried away. And technically I could have split it into 2 books, but I didn't want to. I decided to keep it as one. And yeah, I've enjoyed it. And I still read it myself, and I still criticize myself. So I'll go through it and go, that's not right. Or, I'm not happy with that. But it is what it is. It's now published. I have to move on. And I love it.
Where do people get hold of it if they want to read?
Yeah, if you want to read it, it's available on Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon as a book. You can buy it as online to read on your device. If you want to buy a hard copy, though, lulu.com, just put Spiders in the Curtains. They're the publishers, and you can go directly to them. So yeah, it's available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle or whatever device you're reading it on. Just go online, you can buy it. Yeah, it'd be really great. At the end of the day, it's a self-published book. I don't have publishers. I don't have an agent. I think in a few years' time, when I get a bit more spare time, I'll probably do that and spend a bit more time looking for an agent. I'm planning the second one already, but I've got a lot more work to do on that. I'm a perfectionist, so if I'm not quite happy with it, that's why, you rewrite a section that took you 4 years to write, you go back and rewrite it. Some people write a book in 6 months now. Right? Yeah. It took me a long time. Yeah. But yeah, no, Amazon and Lulu, which are the publishers.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, what do you think of the explosion in the ufology since sort of 2017? 2017 when the footage was leaked, shall we say?
Yeah, 16th of December 2017, wasn't it? I know that date well because that's my birthday, and it was a hell of a birthday present for me. I remember looking at it going, oh my God, you know, this is going to happen. Yeah, the explosion in ufology has been great. Okay, there's a few sides to it. The first of all, it's given people like myself that have always had this views and thoughts and beliefs in ufology. It's given us a little bit of legitimacy, and it's taken the giggle factor away. And actually, when we had the UFO hearings, the UFO hearings that Tim Burchett did in the summer in July, the first thing he said was, "This isn't a joke. This isn't little green men. This isn't silliness." And I actually could have cried at that moment, because what he did was he said, we're looking at this seriously. So that's the first thing. It's given us some legitimacy. And for the people like myself that are believers, you know, I believe in extraterrestrial life. I believe we've been visited, and I believe we are being visited. I believe the government, the US government in particular, has technology that's not of this planet, that has non-human human intelligence it's been built by non-human intelligence, and that has non-human biologics. And because of that, I feel I can freely say that now without people just going, "Oh, you're an idiot." So that's the first side to it. It's given us that side. Secondly, it's actually starting to break down the lie that's been there for a long time. It's starting to actually open it up. The battle is, to a certain extent, with the intelligence community in the States, but it's also with the private companies like Lockheed Martin, EG&G, Raytheon, and so on. And these companies that have got their fingers on this technology, and they've had their fingers on this technology since the late 40s and early 50s. So it's a really interesting times. The thing that worries me most about it, though, is the infighting within the UFO community. And there's a lot of people that don't talk about that. And you've got supporters of one investigator and supporters of another. Me personally, I'm a massive fan of Richard Dolan. Really like Richard Dolan. I think he's a very straightforward investigator. I enjoy his podcasts. I enjoy his web page, and you know, everything about him. He's really good, straightforward. But there's other people that don't like him. Okay, I get that. You know, but it's time to put all this infighting aside. You know, people like Lou Elizondo have taken a lot of stick from ufologists. It's time to put that aside, in my eyes, and it's time to say, you know, we may not agree, because there's things that I don't agree with that I hear. Some things maybe that have come out recently. I think Stephen Greer is one ufologist as such. I don't always agree with what he says, but I respect the fact that he's actually saying it. So we've got to control this infighting. If we can control the infighting, we become a bit more sort of bonded, a bit more of as a group, then we've got a better chance of actually getting this information out. Because the powers that be, the intelligence community, will use that infighting against us. And you know, that's my only worry. But on the other side, it's just a bloody exciting time. It really is. It's so exciting. You know, you know as well as I do. You log on and there's some new information, you know, and we've got all these different websites that the governments are producing. Certainly the US government. What is it? Arrow, and you know, is it All Domain Anomaly Resolution or whatever? Yeah. These are great. Because they're starting to open up. But I think for me, the most discerning moment was a few years ago, when the CIA posted on their website how to photograph a UFO. I've got that. It wasn't on their website. It was on a tweet or something like that. And I screenshotted it because I was like, oh my God, they've actually used the UFO word, or what we call now UAP, but that's and then they put a photograph of an old UFO, and I was like, and I checked to see if this was like a spoof site or it was a joke, or I was waiting for them to remove it because some employee had done something he or she shouldn't have done, but no, it's still there. And I was like, well, here we go. And it's been a roller coaster. It's been some big ups and then some massive downs and everything. But we are slowly digging there because we've got people in power that are now starting to say, we need to see this information. We need to know this information. So yeah, it is an exciting time. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I often log on and think we're getting something that is going to almost be what some would consider disclosure. And then the next minute, it's almost the rug's pulled from under you. So, well, no, we're not. I mean, it could be, it could be some sort of surveillance from a foreign adversary, or you're like, which is it? Are we talking about balloon? So I think a good example of that would be the two or three items that were shot down. I say items, 2 or 3 objects that were shot down in America, Alaska way, and it kind of felt as if they were kind of bouncing between this is potentially something off-world, and then no, it's not. It's just it's China, for example, or it's Russia, or and it was painful to watch because it was almost like it was so close. We just need one person to say, yes, it's definitely not human technology. Bang, that's it. That's disclosure. From an official source. But we just weren't getting it, and then it just went silent. And that's the thing. You've got these things where some of the pilots were saying that one of them was a balloon. And then the other 2 were not. They were nothing like it, and they were very specific in their descriptions of there were no wings and no clear propulsion, and we're starting to move into that world. The Lou Elizondo, the descriptives that he's provided of what the UAP characteristics are, and we were getting into that, and then just nothing, and then silence, and it's that, as you say, it's that roller coaster of up and downs. Of we're going to get something, we're on the cusp of having some kind of disclosure to silence, and then kind of rewinding and 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Well, 1 step.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people were expecting a massive amount of information during the UAP hearings.
Yeah.
There were a few people I heard online, and a couple of people I spoke to said they were a little bit disappointed with it. But I think the thing is, with a lot of the information that we're getting from military sources or ex-military sources, because the Pentagon's released some information. You've got pilots, haven't you? You've got, I can't remember his, David Fravor and Ryan Graves and so on. And these people are giving information, Lou Elizondo and David Grush and so on. And all these people have signed NDAs to a certain extent. Some information they can release because they're being told they can release some information. Some information they can't release. And I think, Grush is a classic example. He's a guy that is bursting with information, and he wants to be able to tell it, but he can't. And it annoys me, actually, Jimmy. It really bugs me, because you get people like Lou Elizondo who are being criticised because they are not releasing information. But you've also got to hand it to these guys and girls that they've signed NDAs. They're ex-military. They signed non-disclosure agreements, and they're honourable enough to honour those agreements. And if you can't honour those agreements, it takes a lot of the authenticity of what you're saying away. So whilst there was half of the community was like, was like me as well, was frustrated. God, I want this information. Please just give it to me. You're doing my head in. The other side of me was like, no, absolutely respect that. And I respect the fact that they've, stuck to their agreements, and they've stuck to their non-disclosure agreements. And I think some information, I think it was David Grush was saying, there were some things he couldn't talk about. He could only discuss it in the skip, which, again, totally understandable. He's got an oversight committee asking him questions. So, he should answer to them, but he should do it the correct way within the law and do it in a secure environment. Other things he was told he could talk about, such as the 1933 retrieval in Italy that apparently Mussolini had. So it gave him legitimacy, and if you ask me, it gave him even more legitimacy. The fact that he was saying, "I can't discuss that in open context," and the same with Lou Elizondo. When he first came on the scene, I was very much like, who is this guy? What's he doing? But that's what we are as ufologists. We are naturally suspicious. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure. But he really warmed to me. Again, with the same with like Jeremy Corbell as well, even though Jeremy Corbell's a filmmaker. But certainly Lou Elizondo and Jeremy, they both really warmed to me because they were both very sensible and very careful with how they approached things. And it bugs me a little bit that they took criticism from the UFO community about that. And if we're going to get disclosure, we need to get it properly. We need to get it done correctly. We need to get it done to a certain extent the way humanity can handle it. We struggle to handle our own lives, and look what's going on in Ukraine and in the Middle East and so on. So, you chuck something else that's completely out of the box into the mix, it could blow up in our face to a certain extent. We don't know. So you've got to do it carefully, and I understand that. And then there is a side which is national security, because there is technology out there that's being played with or used that actually, do you know what, we don't need to know about at this moment in time. Inside, bursting, because I want to know.
Yeah.
But the reality is we have to take a huge deep breath, have a glass of scotch or whatever, sit back and go, let's do this slowly, let's do this carefully. I think the difficulty will always be that there's been so many lies in the past. And once you're lied to, it's very hard to trust that individual. And that goes the same with the government.
Do you think what do you think the next step is? What do you think we're going to see next?
I think what we will see next is we'll see more whistleblowers coming, because the legislation's coming in place, isn't it, to protect these whistleblowers. I think we'll see more coming in. I think we'll see more congressional hearings. We might even see, I think Tim Burchett said he'd do one on his front lawn if they weren't prepared to do it in Congress.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see more of these. We'll see more whistleblowers. I don't know how the intelligence community, as the Pentagon and so on, will react to those. I was really angry and disappointed, like many of us were, when they tried to accuse David Grush of having mental health problems and so on. And we all have mental health problems to a certain extent. It's just different levels and different jobs. It affects you in different ways. That was a really poor bit of, in my eyes, a really poor bit of reporting or backlash from the intelligence community. But I think they've learned from that, and I think they're going to have to accept that they are going to have these whistleblowers coming forward once this legislation really hits and settles in. I think I read somewhere that there was 30 in the queue waiting to come forward, and like David Grush, who was only a second party to it, they're saying that they've got people who were first hand, and not all of them are military. I believe some are working for companies like EG&G and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and so on, who's been working on these technologies for sort of 70, 80 years. So I think what we'll see is we'll see some more hearings, we'll see some more things. I think the mainstream media will start to pick up on it a little bit more, but it will still always be a backstreet story. It won't yet come forwards. And I think we're going to see this over the next probably 30, 40 years. I think it will be a very slow drip feed. I don't think anything's going to happen particularly quickly. And that call me suspicious, or just I don't want to build myself up. Yeah,
30 to 40 years, Patrick.
I think potentially, yeah. I think when I look back to what we were like in 33 years ago in 1990, when I saw what I saw, and the books, and it was really fringe, and it's taken a long time to get this. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to come back and talk to you on here again in 5 years' time. You go, you were so wrong. And I'll go, yes, mate, absolutely I was. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. But I'm really pleased I was.
Yeah. Why do you think we're not hearing much about it in the UK? Why do you think it's almost exclusively US content?
I think because the majority of the tech and everything is probably in the United States. And there's a reason for that. And that's going back to the nuclear tests, and that's where it all happened. They've also a bigger area that can hide better than us. I'm not saying we don't have our own ufology fields, but I don't think we've got the sort of tech investigations that they're doing over there. It's just not here in the UK. And I think it's because a lot of the initial UFO activity in the sort of 40s was around the Nevada test sites and so on, because I believe that the occupants of these objects were interested in us, since we had sort of started cracking open the atom and we're setting off nuclear weapons all over the place. So the majority of the bulk was there. So naturally, when things happened or things went wrong and objects were collected and picked up, they were held within the States. And I think it's almost become, well, you heard of the Brazil incident. They sold apparently the object I can't remember the town where they had the two little extraterrestrials that were meant to have been captured. Apparently they were sold and everything to the United States for like $5 billion. So I think everything gravitates towards that location, and that's just where it is. I mean, I say Jenny Randalls wrote this book in the sort of 70s. That's a decent sized book. These are majority of UK sightings. Right. And some of them she was able to debunk and say no, and others she just couldn't give an answer to. So it doesn't all happen over there or in Mexico or in Canada or anything like that. It does happen. It happens all over the place, but I just think the majority is, or the most of the interest has probably been there.
Yeah. I found it unusual, especially even when David Grush came forward and did his first interview with News Nation. There was virtually nothing in the UK press, and then we obviously had the congressional hearings in the US, and there was bits and pieces that kind of came from that, but it was kind of the fringe newspapers that would tend to run with UFO.
But that's historically what's happened. It takes an awful lot of time. When the New York Times run the Tic Tac story in, what was it, 2017 or whatever, 2018 or whatever, that was groundbreaking, because they were a mainstream media. It's always been a fringe subject, and even though we are trying to pull it out of that, it will still be a fringe subject, I suspect, until one day a UFO lands on the front garden of Buckingham Palace or the White House, and somebody gets out and says, hey, I'm not from this planet. And then I think it will be taken a little bit more seriously. I'm not saying it's not. It is happening. But the mainstream media, UFOs don't sell. Big Brother sells. Social media fallouts between footballers' wives, that sells newspapers. UFOs don't. And let's face it, they're here to sell papers and get revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you alluded to it earlier on with regards to what they represent. I'm interested in, so I'll circle back a bit. I was recently doing some research on Tom DeLonge. Yeah, and he said lots of things.
182.
Blink 182, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of comments, and there's a lot of kind of cryptic things, and he's got that film that's just come out, just been released. California, Monsters in California, is it? Or I can't remember.
I'm not seeing it, yeah.
I'll get crucified for not knowing the name of it. But he alludes to all kinds of things, from demons to interdimensional to extra dimensions, just a multitude of things, lots and lots of different things, not just one specific. We're talking about extraterrestrial, for example. What do you think they are?
This is difficult, right? Okay, there's separate, we'll take separate sides here on things. Firstly, I believe we are being visited by extraterrestrials from planets outside our universe, outside our galaxy, outside our universe, outside, everywhere. I think they're coming over. So that's the first thing. And they are just advanced beings in advanced craft that are coming here and visiting this planet. Pushed out aside. You heard of the Philadelphia experiment, which is the Rainbow Project in 1943, which was a project to create invisibility, radar invisibility, and they stuck a couple of big, I think they were like generators on a ship called the USS Eldridge D-173, And basically they would just produce an energy field around the ship, and it would make it invisible to radar, ideal during the Second World War, because that's what you needed at that time. And it did a few weird things. And one of the things they talked about is not only did it produce radar invisibility, it produced optical invisibility, which is actually quite straightforward because it's just light refraction. So get a pint of water, stick a pencil in it, and you'll see the pencil bend, light refraction. So that's what happened. But it also produced, they said at that time, they met creatures and they called them interdimensional creatures. So I think there's probably 2 or 3 different sides. I think there's UFOs. I think there is interdimensional stuff going on, and I think that probably comes back on the back of the Rainbow Project, which is commonly known as the Philadelphia experiment. And then I think you've got places like Skinwalker Ranch, which are just weird.
Yeah.
And it's not just Skinwalker, there's 2 or 3 other locations, and they're just odd. And I don't know, and I can only get my information from what I've seen on either the History Channel or whatever. But there's some really odd things going on, and there is interdimensional portals or whatever. But I don't know those. But my personal opinion is I think the majority of the craft we see are probably just extraterrestrial. They're just, without normalizing it, or by normalizing, just bog standard aliens from another planet are coming and visiting us.
Yeah.
But then I think there's another side to it where you have probably got interdimensional stuff. But you've also got multiverse. And we talk about that's been discussed, that there's multiple universes. So there's millions, infinite universes. So you can be Jimmy from UAP files in this universe, but in the next universe, you're actually a prime minister of the UK. And in the next universe, you're the homeless guy that's living on the streets. So you can be absolutely anybody. And then there's another side that maybe they're coming from, other universes, multiple universes. It's such a massive question. It's almost impossible to answer. But I think from my point of view, I think the majority of what we're seeing, I think the most of what we're seeing is probably just creatures from another planet, be it another galaxy or solar system or, wherever. But they are just coming and visiting us, and they're doing what we do. We go off and we explore the jungles, and we try and find information about new species and so on in the Amazon jungles. And every now and then, there's a new species found. And I think that's probably no different to what's been going on with the extraterrestrials that are visiting us. I think some of them are just explorers. Some of them are probably quite aggressive, and some of them probably aren't. And they're there to sort of just keep an eye on us.
What do you make of NASA? What do you make of the NASA's involvement now? And we're going to look into this, and we're going to search, and we're going to give you all the information that we find.
I think NASA, what NASA stands for? It's never a straight answer or something. I'm a massive fan. I'll be honest with you. I'm a massive fan of NASA. My father was stationed at Kennedy in the 60s during the Apollo missions, because he did the Polaris missile testing for the nuclear missiles for the UK. He was on it. He was a nuclear submariner, like my son. My son's a nuclear submariner. And so I've always been massive a NASA fan, at awe with NASA. But I don't think NASA really know what they're dealing with. They know what they've got. They know what they've had, but they don't really know how to deal with it. That's being looked at by other departments. I was very disappointed with NASA with what they released. They didn't really say a lot, if you ask me. I thought it was very lukewarm. It was very, very lukewarm. I was kind of hoping for them to go, right, okay, yes, there are craft outside, that we're seeing, and they've been seen since the 60s, when we were landing on the moon and when we've been flying space shuttles and stuff like that. We've seen these craft. We don't know what they are. We just don't know. But, I thought their answer was very, very lukewarm and disappointing. But that's part of ufology, is to take the disappointments and, you take them and you bottle them up and you put them there and go, right, we'll leave that one till later. We'll look at this. So you know, it's another up and then it's another
Yeah.
down.
You
So
think we'll be
I,
well rehearsed at that now?
yeah, I think so. And I think NASA knows a lot more, and a lot more than they're saying. But you know, they don't. I don't know if they're being told, "Oh, you can't release this information because you're going to freak out the public." Where in reality, I think most public would just go, "Yeah, cheers, bud. We know that. That's cool. Move on."
Yeah.
And that's how I think it could be. But yeah, I was a bit disappointed. I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, I was disappointed. I was kind of especially unhappy with Bill Nelson's kind of breakdown of David Grush, kind of minimalizing. Oh, he's the guy that's got a friend that's got an alien in a warehouse. That's not what he said, you know. But to trivialize it to that extent, there'll be people that will listen to that and they'll take that soundbite and that will be what they take away from who that David Grush guy is, what Bill Nelson said. So I think, and he knows exactly what David Grush said. So I was disappointed by that. Disappointed that we, as you say, we didn't get anything. It was nothing.
We literally got nothing. But in many ways, NASA's done their own knees by saying that. If you're going to belittle somebody or almost sort of humour them, yeah, you know you're screwed really, because you only do that if you've got no answer to give or you can't give an answer.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ross Coulthard that said, what we don't understand is it Ross Coulthard or Tim Burchett said, we don't understand. If they've got nothing to hide, why are they being so evasive?
Yeah.
If they've got nothing to hide, why won't they let us have a skiff? If they've got nothing to hide, you know, why are they telling us you can't go and to this location, or we'll show you a picture of a blurred image of a UFO? If they've got nothing to hide, why are they doing that? Why are they being so obstructive? You know, why is the intelligence community being so difficult? And, you know, to me, there's your answer. You're only difficult and awkward, and you know this, if you've got something to hide. If you've got nothing to hide, then you're like, hey, come in, have a look around my house. You know, I don't know how to hide. Yeah. If you're going, no, I'm not letting you in, jog on, then you know that there's something behind that door that you want to look at.
Yeah. It's very easy, isn't it? If you look at the claims made by David Grush, all you need to do is say, well, I'll look into it. And I'll go to the locations that he suggests. I'll speak to the people that he says that I should speak to. And I can come back and say, I've spoken to them and I've been to those locations and there's nothing there. And that would, you know, great. But the fact that they're not doing that, the fact that they're not, you know, we're not going to say that we have or haven't been to locations. We're just going to, you know, it's easy. If somebody's a fantasist, it's easy to disprove it. Okay, well, tell me what you know. I'll go and check, and it will be it will be an evidence-based investigation. I've looked at the evidence, and it doesn't exist. I've been to those locations; they're not there. I've spoken to those people, and they say that Mr. Grush is making this all up, and they didn't say this to them, and that would be the end of it. But the fact that they can't do that or won't do that suggests to me that there is something there.
Yeah, so, and I think, do you know what, during the UAP hearing, one of the most astonishing moments for me was, I think it was Andy Ogles, who's a senator for, I can't remember where he is, but he's the one that went, I will enact the Holman rule. And I'm like, Google. What's that? I was like, Google it. What the heck's the Holman rule? I have no idea. But this guy, he's part of the intelligence committee. He's on the intelligence oversight committee or something. I don't know. He's part of the intelligence community, and he was dead serious. This guy wasn't messing around. You know, there was a little bit of smiles from some of the others, but when he came on and spoke, and he went, "I'm going to, if anyone obstructs us," and I thought, oh my gosh, this. And when I realised, I Googled it, went Holman rule. And I read it and I was like, wow, this guy's serious. And that was hope, in the vain hope to try and say to you, look, you can stall us because we know you're hiding something, but we'll get there. We'll hold your wages. We'll stop the money for your department. But I don't know if that's actually happened. But as I said to you, if I'm stood there, you walk up to me and go, Patch, can I have a look in your box? Because I want to see if there's something that belongs to me in there. And I've got my foot on it, and I've got my hand behind my back, and I'm holding a 45 behind my back. You're going to go, he's got something to hide. And essentially, that's exactly what the US government's doing to, to Tim Burchett and all the other people that are involved. I think it's Anna Paulina Luna, who's one of the congresswomen who's involved. And if they're doing that, I really hope that they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing for the information. It's just, gosh, it's an interesting time. That's all I can say. It's fascinating. It really is exciting.
It is. Okay, Patch. Well, I think that's probably a good place to end it, man. Thanks very much for talking to me.
Pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. And hopefully we'll do it again soon, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I will say this now, mate. I've known you for a long time, and I think the subject's getting more and more interesting. And I think me and you, our brains will be a lot more busy over the next few months. And I just think that, we're going to start to be shown things that we never thought would happen. And for me, it's just really an exciting time. And, I really enjoy the subject as well. And it's always good to see you, mate, as well. And we don't catch up enough. We just sort of bump into each other every now and then, don't
we? Yeah. I agree. Absolutely. Well, good talking to you, buddy. Take care of yourself, man. And fingers crossed it's not 30 to 40 years like you think. 6 months. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Do you know what? 6 months' time, if we get a proper full disclosure. Okay, I'll tell you what. If we get proper full disclosure in a year's time, I'll take you out for a really big meal. We'll have a knees up and it'll be on me.
Done. Deal.
All right, mate.
Take care, buddy. Care.